Welcome to Pat's Cast. I'm Brad Whitaker. The New England Patriots have traded Pro Bowler, he was a Pro Bowler, Mac Jones to the Jacksonville Jaguars for a 6th-round pick. This is some breaking news coming out. Rare Sunday podcast to cover this. And the end of the Mac Jones era in New England is finally here, and it was a really tough story, right? I mean, he came in as a rookie. Really, I've never seen a rookie enter the league looking as poised and confident and understanding the complexities of the Patriots offense like Mac Jones. He picked up that offense, and Brian Hoyer said this before. He picked up that offense quicker than anyone he's ever seen. Hoyer said it took me 3 years to get to the point he got to in training camp. One of the smartest young quarterbacks to enter the NFL. And we've seen a precipitous decline over the last couple of years. And a lot of that blame has to go on Mac Jones, but it is also a cautionary tale about not developing young quarterbacks, not giving them the weapons, the protection that they need to really succeed in this league. And the Jacksonville Jaguars really get an opportunity here. Obviously, he's not going to be the starter. Trevor Lawrence is that guy. But they have an opportunity here for 1 year if Lawrence goes down to really have someone who is competent in a new situation and is actually going home. I mean, one of the big issues with Mac Jones is he didn't really trust the Patriots coaching staff, the trainers, the people he was working with over the last couple of seasons. And now he's going to go to Jacksonville where he grew up. And he's going to have his family. He's going to have a support system around him. And they're going to be able to get him confident again, hopefully, so that he doesn't make those mental errors that he was making. Look, Mac was never the most athletic quarterback, certainly didn't have a very strong arm, but he was smart and he knew how to read defenses, go through the progression, make the correct throws, very accurate, but he became a bit of a head case after he got hit too many times and worked within a simplified offense with Matt Patricia, and then that really battered him, and he couldn't really come back and had an even worse year and was ultimately benched playing under Bill O'Brien. So, look, this is sad because I was a big Mac fan, and it's easy to forget he was a potential Rookie of the Year candidate. He would have been Rookie of the Year if it weren't for Jamar Chase having such an incredible season for the Cincinnati Bengals as a rookie. And the interesting thing is Mac Jones is backing up Trevor Lawrence. He was a better rookie quarterback, went in the same draft as Trevor Lawrence, but he was a much better rookie than Lawrence was. Remember, those two went head-to-head near the very end of the season. I think it was the second to last game of both of their respective rookie seasons. And it was one of the best games of Mac Jones' career. Yeah, he only threw for 227 yards. They ran the ball a lot because they built up an early lead. But he had 3 touchdown passes, and the Patriots won the game 50-10. People forget about that game because the Patriots kind of stumbled out of that season. They were the best team in the AFC, I think, at 9-4 at one point. And then they lost a stretch of games. They went to Indianapolis. I think it was Thursday night. Struggled a bit. And Trevor Lawrence came into New England, and the Patriots really had a great bounce-back game, won by 40 points. Lawrence threw just 1 touchdown, 193 yards, and 3 interceptions against that Patriots defense. And we were very confident going, look, Patriots look to be a playoff team, and we clearly got the best quarterback in the draft. Mac Jones is better than Trevor Lawrence. Mac Jones looked better than Justin Fields. And look, Justin Fields probably is considered better, but he's not the greatest, right? Like, I hope the Patriots don't trade for him, even though I think there is some potential upside there. But Justin Fields wasn't anything special. And Trey Lance, obviously, was a bust. Mac Jones, you can still put him ahead of Trey Lance at this point. But that ultimately did not turn out to be the quarterback draft that people thought it was. And Trevor Lawrence turned out to be a pretty decent quarterback, although he did, I think, take a bit of a step back this season after a decent sophomore year. But ultimately, what we saw was a guy who came into the system in New England, a system that was still built upon Tom Brady, that Cam Newton played better than, in hindsight, we probably should have expected. And they had Was James White out there? I think they had James White. Edelman was gone, but they had Jacoby Myers. They had Hunter Henry. And he had the protection, the Josh McDaniels scheme, and he really picked up the complexities of the Earhart-Perkins offense in a way that no rookie quarterback, I don't think, ever really could, because Mac Jones, I think he had a very high, one of the best Wonderlic scores coming out of the NFL, and Belichick slowly took his protection, those weapons away. They drafted a guy like Cole Strange, who is a decent left guard, don't get me wrong, but was not a first-round draft choice. Got rid of Jacoby Myers this past season, didn't replace him. They brought in Juju Smith-Schuster, who was not as good, couldn't stay on the field. Devontae Parker is a battered mess and can't separate. And really, the only guy Mac Jones had to throw to this season was Demario Douglas, who was benched for a handful of weeks after fumbling the ball in week 2 on really a play that, like, you really shouldn't get mad at a rookie about. Like, you should still protect the ball, right? And Douglas should have held on to it, but he was stripped from behind. And Mac Jones's best weapon went to the bench, and he was really working with scraps throughout the rest of the season. Got beat up a lot behind that offensive line that couldn't stay healthy. Trent Brown couldn't stay healthy, was a head case in the locker room. Michael Onwenu didn't look great, but until later in the season, I think he wasn't healthy, and then you moved him to right tackle really too late. Bailey Zappi benefited from that more than anyone, and Mac just really struggled. And, you know, it's tough because I thought heading into this past season, the Patriots were going to be good again. Not a Super Bowl contender, but you thought Mac would at least return to rookie form, which if he was Rookie of the Year candidate, that his first year in the league, and you think he's going to be that guy again, well, then you got a pretty good quarterback out there. And I think the Patriots were like 3rd or 4th in the league in offensive points as a rookie, and you thought that was going to happen again with Bill O'Brien coming in, bringing in the 2 tight end offense with Mike Gesicki and Farrell Brown contributing. And it looked pretty good, even though they lost the first game in week 1. You're going up against the defending NFC champion Philadelphia Eagles. But go back and watch the highlights from that game when Mac Jones went into the season with fresh legs, with confidence, in a new offensive system. And had Kayshon Boutte gotten that second foot down, I really think the Patriots would have won that game. And potentially the team would be in a different situation now, because a win in week 1 might have flipped the script a little bit. I mean, Mac threw a bad interception in week 2 against Miami, but they were still in that game. And then they went into the New York, didn't play the best offensive game. They were playing in crappy weather, but they won that game. Probably would have started the season 2-1. Maybe had Mac not made that mistake in week 2, which, building off of a win in week 1, perhaps he would have had the confidence and not thrown that little butterfly to Devontae Parker in the corner of the end zone, the front corner of the end zone, that ultimately got intercepted. They could have been a 3-0 team. And then suddenly things change a little bit, right? The offensive line gets healthy a bit. Mac is confident that the team is winning. The defense is playing okay. And you start to build some momentum. But there were just so many mistakes made starting the season 0-2. But take a look at those highlights from week 1 against, especially if you're a Jacksonville Jaguars fan and you're watching this right now, like, that can be the Mac Jones you get. They lost that game against the Eagles week 1, but go watch it. Mac was actually somewhat elusive in the pocket. His footwork was better. He was not throwing off his back foot. He got hit on this throw downfield that went about 30 yards and it was actually dropped. I think it was Juju Smith-Schuster or someone who dropped it. Like, go watch Mac's highlights from that first game this past season. He was a completely different quarterback than he was in Germany or he was against the New York Giants, and before he ultimately got benched. He was a different guy, and really he just needs to be in a new situation with support, with guys he trusts, with his family around. And Trevor Lawrence, who has been injured before, if he goes down, which, knowing the NFL, nearly half of the quarterbacks in the league do go down at some point during the season, I think you're going to have a good quarterback out there who is going to be in a low-pressure situation, who is poised when he's confident, who, you can watch the clips. He's working on his footwork this offseason. he's never going to be the most athletic guy. He was never going to be Tom Brady. But I think in a new situation, Mac can be revitalized, and he's got 1 year left on that contract. Hopefully, he has an opportunity this season if Trevor Lawrence does go down, plays well, and has a chance to get a decent contract somewhere. Maybe he's not going to be a starter, but he could be a backup in a place like San Francisco. Or if Lawrence goes down for a while and Mac comes in and fills that role pretty well, maybe he can be a starter again. So I do think this is a good opportunity for him, and I do think it might be the best move for the Patriots. I've made the argument that Mac Jones is a good training camp quarterback, so it might have made some sense to keep him around, especially if you're bringing in a young rookie. But there's also a real chance that Mac Jones wearing the red jersey in practice, in training camp, not taking the hits, he would have looked better than the rookie quarterback who has a lot more tools, a lot more athleticism than him. I really think that was a real possibility. And then you had this odd QB competition where it's like, all right, Mac was great in training camp, but do we start him? He was great in the preseason. Do we still start him, though? Because we have this young rookie, or we brought in this veteran quarterback. Mac outperformed him, but we know he takes a few hits in the game, he's going to get in his head and start throwing off his back foot and making poor decisions. And that's really the key. Hopefully he's built up a little bit of calluses. This has been a rough story for him over the last 2 seasons, but I do think that rookie quarterback that we saw 3 seasons ago, that's still in him. I think it's still in him, and I hope he does well. I'll be rooting for him unless they're playing the Patriots. Actually, the Patriots go into Jacksonville this season, so that will be very interesting. Something to also note, also this trade, the Patriots, I guess we're shopping him around all week, calling teams. They really wanted a 5th-round draft pick, but they ultimately had to settle for a 6th-round pick, which Jacksonville was willing to offer. And who knows? That could be a good draft pick. They got Demario Douglas in the 6th round this past year. They actually drafted Kayshon Boutte ahead of him. So, you can find steals at that point in the draft, especially guys who are undersized, undervalued. A guy like Douglas coming out of Liberty, which is not a big name school, although they made a big bowl game this past year because I don't think they lost all season. But the Patriots, they're moving on, and maybe it makes sense to not have that QB room looking the way it is. But speaking of that QB room, when this news broke, I guess Bailey Zappi on Instagram liked a post saying Mac Jones was traded to the Jaguars. So not a good look. Look, I like Zappi. I don't think he's the quarterback of the future. I think he might be a decent backup. The guy wants to be a starter, clearly. He has a chip on his shoulder. He's very confident. But as we saw, especially the last week of the season in the snow, I don't think he's the guy. I was making that argument. He might be the guy after the Denver game where he did look really good, had some decent protection. But Denver was also kind of flailing, and they're now in full-on rebuild mode now. So don't like Bailey Zappi doing that. Even Tom Brady, and you watch this in the Dynasty, was not the biggest fan of Jimmy Garoppolo nipping at his heels, but always said nice things about Jimmy, even on social media after he was traded to the Niners, said nice things about Jacoby Brissett, took pictures of the 3 of them at the Super Bowl celebration and saying, I love this QB room, I love these guys, and that's not something you do. Obviously Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones didn't have the best relationship, and neither did Brady and Garoppolo. And you got to take the high ground at that point. So that's not the best look on Zappi's part, but I don't expect him to be the starter heading into next year. Probably will be the backup. I think he still has a couple years left on his contract. But going forward, what will this mean for the Patriots at the quarterback position? I still think the highest likelihood is they draft a QB at number 3 overall. As I mentioned on the podcast later this week, Drake May's draft stock does seem to be plummeting in the eyes of the league. There are reportedly scouts within the Patriots organization who are not very high on Drake May. But we're also hearing rumors that J.J. McCarthy is considered the 3rd best quarterback in the draft. Now, I've also mentioned on the podcast, I'm a big fan of J.J. McCarthy. I think he needs to sit for a year. I don't actually think Drake May needs to sit for a year. I think he is one of the toughest quarterbacks in this draft because he did not have great protection at North Carolina. He did not have the weapons that these other quarterbacks at the top of the draft had. But, you know, Drake May, there are issues there with his footwork, sometimes with his decision making, but I think when it comes to reading schemes, going through the progression, he's ahead of guys like Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. Not as athletic as those guys, certainly, but maybe has a better arm than both of those guys. I'm not sure about Caleb, but he can be accurate. He certainly can throw downfield. He can throw off balance. You can use him as kind of a bulldozing quarterback. Like, he's not going to out sprint safeties and corners like Jaden Daniels can, but he can be a Josh Allen type guy and really plow through linebackers. So I do think some of this Drake May news is just trying to bring his value down. So maybe even if the Patriots want to trade back and they do like him, this is a total psyop, so they can draft him, at maybe 5th or 6th, and then pick up another first round pick, and then some team that likes JJ or something can draft him at number 3. There's a lot of ways you can slice it. But I am very high on JJ McCarthy too. I think the issue with him is, when he had a bad interception in the Rose Bowl game that looked very Mac Jones-esque, throwing to his right. For some reason, when he throws to the sideline to his right, he does not. He just doesn't have it. But he can throw everywhere else. Also handed the ball off a lot at Michigan, so was a real beneficiary of play action and being able to fool the defense that way. But he is mobile, he is fast, and like Drake May, probably even more so than Drake May, I'd argue, he is tough. I mean, he's taken some real hits and still been able to complete passes. And he's clearly clutch in ways that we have not seen from Drake May, certainly, from Caleb Williams, particularly this past season, and even Jaden Daniels, who had some close games against good teams, but also really beat up on a lot of bad teams at LSU. I think McCarthy is the kind of, he's not Tom Brady, obviously, and he's more athletic than Brady, but he's not as tall. He's kind of tall, but he's not. He doesn't have the same physique as Brady, although Brady was a bit pudgy entering the league. But coming out of Michigan, has a good resume of making comebacks against good teams. I don't think the Patriots should draft him at number 3 overall. I think if they have a chance to trade back into the late first round and he still hasn't been snagged, then you go after him. But right now, it looks like Drake May's draft stock is plummeting. JJ McCarthy's is going up. You have to at least consider Marvin Harrison Jr., considering he is going to be ready on day one as probably a top 10 NFL wide receiver. Going to be great for years to come. He's probably the best player in the draft, at least when you compare who they are at their respective positions. But you understand, you can't win in this league without a quarterback. And there are going to be plenty of opportunities if they don't take Drake May, if they don't take J.J. McCarthy, to maybe draft a Michael Penix in the second round, or maybe Bo Nix falls. And I haven't done a lot of research on Spencer Rattler, but I've been watching a lot of Xavier Legette film, who I think the Patriots should go after in maybe the third round. That guy drops to the third or fourth round. Like, he's got some tools. He had no protection. He's very elusive, has a very strong arm. Like, I think Spencer Rattler is a guy that is kind of overlooked in this draft. And, that's someone you have to consider. But there also are reports the Patriots will consider bringing in a veteran as a bridge guy. The guy that most people think is highly likely is Jacoby Brissett, who worked with Alex Van Pelt before. But Brissett's had a lot of ups and downs, right? So I'm not as big of a fan of that. I would rather have a guy like Joe Flacco, because even though Flacco is like pushing 40 years old, we saw what he did in Cleveland. We know he's a solid veteran guy. We saw what he did with Alex Van Pelt. He's going to be a good mentor to a young rookie that you're bringing in. So I do like Joe Flacco over Jacoby Brissett. And I'm a little more high on Russell Wilson than a lot of people, just because Russell Wilson's going to cost you nothing. Because whatever his next team pays him, whether it's the Patriots or the Steelers, wherever he goes, you're just helping Denver, because they can deduct whatever salary he's making in his new spot from what the Denver Broncos are paying him. And Russell Wilson isn't going to do that. He's mad at the Broncos. He's pissed at Denver. He's pissed at Sean Payton. So he's going to want them to pay the maximum amount and give the Patriots more salary cap room to put weapons around him, or the Steelers, wherever he goes. So I think that's something you should consider. I know there's ego concerns. He may not be the best mentor to a young rookie quarterback, but of the veteran quarterbacks available in free agency, other than Kirk Cousins, you have to put him at number 2. I mean, I guess Baker Mayfield's probably better at this point. But, Russell Wilson, I think, is getting a bad rep. If you look at his stats, you look at what he did this past season, you look what he's done the last 2 years in Denver. He was not the same guy as he was in Seattle, but he's still a decent quarterback. And I think, look, it doesn't work out. You sign him for the veteran minimum for 1 year. You can always cut him before the start of the season. He gets beat out in training camp. I think it's worth the risk, and you're not going to lose much if it doesn't work out. So I hope at least the Patriots bring him in, do an interview, let him, see what opportunities are there. And hey, you head into the season and you draft Marvin Harrison Jr., you get Russell Wilson, and you have Hunter Henry coming back. You have Demario Douglas, who looks to be a great slot receiver. Hopefully you get Kendrick Bourne back. Suddenly you got some gas to cook with, right? And hopefully you have Onwenu back. Maybe you go after Tyron Smith or Jonah Williams, and now you have a decent O-line. And, I'm not sure that's a Super Bowl team, but that is a team that can win games. I think that can be at least a 500 level football team, particularly if they do prioritize the run game, which Alex Van Pelt really likes to do. Sounds like the Patriots want to go after Saquon Barkley, who they could probably get for about $10 million. And that's a lot to pay a running back, but for a guy as talented as Barkley, splitting reps with Ramondre Stevenson, a run-heavy team, relying on play actions and bootlegs and a new school, old school hybrid West Coast offense, that's not a bad thing, especially with the defense that it looks like they have. And the Patriots look like they also want to add a lot of, or at least one decent veteran defensive player. Kyle Duggar will probably be back with the transition tag. And, we know that defense with Christian Gonzalez coming back. L'Jarius Sneed is available via trade. And I think he only has a year left on his contract. So you could probably get him for not too high of a draft pick. There's a lot of things the Patriots can do to really have a successful offseason and get this team off and running. And with a guy like Russell Wilson, you could be an above 500 team and really develop that next young quarterback who, even if Russ is not the best mentor, he can at least see him the way he works as a veteran in this league and take over in year 2 and really hit the ground running in the same way we've seen Jordan Love hit the ground running in certain places, the same way Patrick Mahomes hit the ground running in year 2 with Kansas City. But, Matt LaFleur, the head coach of the Green Bay Packers, has said, any quarterback, I don't care how good they are, should sit on the bench for one season. And if you're not going to draft a quarterback at 3rd overall, that guy probably is sitting. And, being behind a Joe Flacco or a Russell Wilson is, I think, a really ideal scenario. And hopefully the Patriots at least consider Russ now that he is a free agent. And you can get a guy of that caliber, even though he's 35 or whatever, and ultimately get this team back off and running and get at least a competent offense out there, because an average competent offense paired with an elite defense is a good football team. That is a playoff football team, and I think the Patriots can be that as soon as this next season. But we'll see how it plays out. Mac Jones heading to Jacksonville. We'll be back at Pat's Cast tomorrow with more coverage as we kick off NFL free agency. This is really going to determine what the Patriots do in the NFL draft if they bring in a veteran quarterback, who they sign on the offensive line, if they bring in any weapons at receiver. Not a lot available, but maybe they pay for a guy like Calvin Ridley. And that will determine what the Patriots do come late April. Be sure to like this video and subscribe. Share it with your friends. We'll be back tomorrow with more Patriots coverage.